Hello and welcome. My name is Kevin Smith. I'm the Director of Product Development at StockTrak.com, and this webinar is going to cover the new features that we're releasing for the spring of 2021. So to get started, as a summary, I'm going to divide this up into 4 sections. The general improvements we're making to the site that apply to basically everybody. The specific improvements we're doing for trading and research that's going to directly impact your students. Our improvements to the administration functions that make your life easier as a professor, and the financial literacy enhancements that we are building as part of the StockTrak platform going forward for personal finance classes, high school outreach in general, improving the general financial literacy of students across the campus. So first, going to kick off with our general improvements. Now, at a high level, the general improvements we're making across StockTrak is to make it so you as a professor need to spend less time teaching students how to use a StockTrak and more time actually teaching. So making it so it's easier to use the site, making it so that students can get support directly from our team instead of having to go through you, and just generally making it a little bit easier to work with. So first and foremost is going to be our new dashboard. So this is going to be coming out in the next few weeks. The new dashboard on StockTrak removes a lot of the clutter, and it makes it easy for the students to just dive right into what you're asking them to do on StockTrak. So the first change is that we're putting the assignments front and center. So at this point, the majority of classes on StockTrak are using our assignments function, where you're giving your students specific tasks they need to complete. And we put it right at the top of the page, so it's very clear what they need to do, and they can just get started right away. Classes that are using our financial literacy resources will also have a snapshot of the budget game. If your class is not using the budget game, this will not appear, followed by the portfolio of the student. Generally speaking, compared to our current dashboard, there's a lot less clutter. So if you take a look at the current dashboard on StockTrak.com, we have the professor announcements at the top, and we have some portfolio stuff, but then it's tables after tables after tables, and the feedback we generally get is students have been getting a little bit lost in this, especially the first time they log in. They're not really sure what they're looking at. Compare that with our new dashboard. It's really straightforward. There's just one giant block. Your professors, as an announcement, are on the side of the page here. The announcements the students need to do is right at the top. When's it coming, what do they need to do, click the button to go do it. If they have the budget game, it'll have the information on their budget game here. I'll talk a little bit more about the budget game soon, with a button to go play it. For their portfolio, they'll have their portfolio snapshot here near the top, followed by their open positions and their watch list. So again, we're making it really easy for students to see what they need to see when they need to see it. Once we release our dashboard, we'll also be asking for some student feedback for adjustments. For most classes, this is going to be coming out right towards the end of the semester. So really, this is going to have the biggest impact on your fall classes. Next up is our onboarding. So on StockTrak, we have had tutorial videos built into the site for some time now, and they've been among the most popular pieces of StockTrak for professors and students. Just how do they actually go in and make a trade? So the new onboarding that we've launched on StockTrak gives your students kind of a tour on key pages on the site. So there's going to be a tour on the dashboard when students log in for the first time, explaining how their portfolio works. There's going to be a tour when the students go to make their first trade. And there's going to be tours on some of the other reports pages too to help students really get started. And students can revisit these tours later. And the way this works is that the first time a student would come to the trading page, a tour will launch automatically. If they cancel the tour or they want to see it again, we also have a button that lets them get that tour back. And it really just kind of walks them through the different pieces of the trading page and how students interact with all of these things, how do they get information, and how they actually place their first trades. So really, again, making it so that you as the professor don't need to spend your class time on this. StockTrak will handle it for you. Now, in that same vein, the last big enhancement for general usage is live chat messaging. So now, as part of StockTrak, on every single page we have a live chat widget where your students can get in touch with our support team anytime. It's live chat where we have our agent standing by during market hours. If your students are coming in here at night, they can leave a message and our team will get back to them the next business day. So, the whole thing is that you as a professor don't need to be doing troubleshooting on StockTrak. 90% of the issues that come through professors from us that our students are saying something's broken are usually user error, where they just didn't understand what they were looking at. So by having the live chat here, a lot less burden on you, a lot smoother trading process for your entire class. Now, Speaking of trading, are enhancements that we've been developing for the trading and research parts of StockTrak. So first up, the one we've been getting asked for the most in the last few months has been updates to our mutual fund research tools. Now, StockTrak has always had research tools built in for mutual funds, basic things like NAV, charts, and stuff. So if I go to our quotes tool and I look up the Motley Fool's mutual fund, for example, I can pull it up here and I get basic NAV. I can get a little bit of charts and price histories for this. But we added some dedicated new tools specific for mutual funds. So the new mutual funds tool here, Fund Overview, will give me a picture of what this fund's objectives are, generally how their assets allocated, a little bit deeper stuff that you would be interested for funds with risk ratings. Fund Performance shows how this fund performs over time compared to its peers. And Fund Holdings is perhaps the most important one of what is actually in this fund. What's in the portfolio and how is it going by performance over time. So the mutual fund research tools are really big, especially for the lower level classes and personal finance classes where they talk a lot about mutual fund trading. But it applies for every single class that touches on mutual funds, just a little bit better picture of what's going on in those funds. Next up is custom exchanges. So custom exchanges is a new feature on StockTrak that would let you as the professor dictate a list of stocks you want your students to be able to trade. So instead of just having an open symbol input where students can enter anything, they get a drop-down menu with just the symbols that you want them to be able to trade. Not every class would use this, but there's a few really key times when this comes up. The first, and the one that we got the most requests for, was just, I want all my students only to trade the S&P 500. So those 500 stocks, put them in a list, and the students can only trade those. They're in a drop-down the students can navigate through. That works great. The other kinds of events that came up a lot with us is sponsored events featuring local businesses. So, for example, we were working with several nonprofits who had sponsorships that kind of were focusing on trying to have it so students would be thinking about investing, but investing in their local community. So they wanted a list of 30 or 40 companies that had a large local presence that they wanted students to focus on for the investing game. That was another use case. The last use case has come up in the last few months as we've been testing this, especially at the high school level, where the teacher would have a student research-driven trading session. The way this would work is the students would work in teams where they would do intensive research on 5 or 6 stocks that they would present to the class, and then the professor would open up the trading session, allowing only the stocks that were presented by the class. So that way the students, everybody knew who these companies were, everyone has seen the research on it, and it was done as a group activity, and then everybody needed to put that research to work. All of these really come down to different ways to restrict the investing universe. This doesn't apply to most classes on StockTrak, but it is a new tool available for you. For the trading enhancements, one of the biggest changes is that if you used StockTrak 5 or 6 years ago, you'd have noticed that our spot feed also included commodities. Like as of right now, it only had currencies. So we were able to upgrade our feed again and get new access to commodity spots as trading as cash spots. So gold, silver, corn, oil, soy, wheat, these are now all part of our cash spots trading pit. So in addition to currencies, your students can trade just spots. This is really important for a lot of classes as you're starting to get into derivatives, but before you start getting into futures, just making basic cash trade on spot contracts is a very good introduction to how the actual leverage trading with futures and future options works later. In terms of the actual rankings and how the students can be graded, we're also improving our risk-adjusted rankings. So the Sharpe ratio. We've had Sharpe ratio on StockTrak for years. It's one of the most popular ways to assess students across StockTrak. But the biggest downside of our Sharpe ratio with our current calculation is that the risk-free rate was set to your class's interest earned on cash rate. Now, this makes sense from a certain perspective because that is the risk-free rate of these portfolios. But we noticed that in a lot of sessions where there might be prizes that are involved or extra credit, students would find a way to game this system where they would make a few quick trades and they would get a portfolio return of 0.5% or something, and they would sell everything off and hold cash, which means that their variance approaches 0, which means their Sharpe ratio is astronomical. This new system lets you set your risk-free rate independently of the interest earned on cash for your class. And we annualize instead of just giving the raw Sharpe ratio of the number of days in the class, so it's a little bit more consistent and it makes more sense how you would normally compare Sharpe ratios in the real world. So this one, the Sharpe ratio is coming out in the next couple of weeks. This is the closest to being finished. We're also releasing new ratios. So the current StockTrak's class rankings had what we called the alpha-beta ratio, which was based on the beta of the stocks in a portfolio, and we would base that on the data feed of the betas that we were getting. This was not a standard ratio by any stretch of the imagination. It was fairly complicated for students to understand what exactly they were looking at. And worst of all, if your students were trading anything beyond US stocks, it would be off because we just didn't have the beta in our data feed. So we're going to be replacing this with Jensen's Alpha, which is going to be based on the beta of the portfolio itself. And you're going to be able to choose which benchmarks you want this to be compared against for the calculation. Very similar, we're also going to be releasing the Trenner ratio. Again, it's going to be an annualized ratio for all three of these, so you're going to have new options on how to see the risk-adjusted returns for your class, both you and your students, of course. Which gets into your administration reports. So we have a few important enhancements on the administration side. The first one is we have improved data exports. So if you have a typical class can now export your open positions the same day the class ends. Previously, you would have to wait until the day after your class ended, so at least 24 hours later, and you'd be able to pull these reports. However, with this new one, you'll be able to pull the open positions at the end of the day at any given day of the class. So if you just want to check out what your students' holdings are for a midterm grading, it's going to be a lot easier to pull. Same thing with transaction histories, and pretty much every report you'll be able to pull with almost real-time data. We recommend after 6 p.m. Just because that way the students' portfolio values are no longer reevaluating when you pull it. There are some issues we found on very large classes with class sizes of over 150 students. Might have a problem pulling the entire rankings in one go. If you do have any issues with it, our support team can pull these for you and email it to you at any time. So just hit them on the live chat and they'll be able to prepare it. And we're continuing to revise this system over the summer. We're just trying not to make too many changes in the middle of the semester in case it has any impacts on the current reporting. But over the summer, we're going to be rebuilding this from scratch to give you full exports at any time. With that said, we also have what we call our Fun Facts Report. Now, the Fun Facts Report is something that we had come up quite a few times when we had department challenges or university challenges or even corporate challenges where the administrators wanted something they could share about what's going on with the trading competition in the middle of the competition. So let me pull this up, I can show you what it looks like. The Fun Facts Report basically gives you a trading summary of what your students are doing in your class. Now, on your professor dashboard already, you'll be able to see top traded securities, which gives you a list of how many users have traded certain symbols. But now in your administration reports, we have top traded securities as its own full-blown report, which will let you specify any date range that you want to see for your class. You can filter it whether you want to see the number of trades or the number of users who have traded something. And you can also compare the number of buys, the number of sells, the number of shorts, and the number of covers. So it looks like for the last week on our StockTrak National Challenge, Tesla has been the most purchased, whereas GameStop is the most shorted, which that makes quite a lot of sense to me. But I also see Tesla is up in the list in the number of shorts, so there's not very much consistency there. So this comes up a lot if you're just looking for some fun facts, which is why we call it our Fun Facts Report to share with your class. And this kind of stuff is a really good way to kind of launch your class, just kind of here's what's been going on in the portfolios of the class over the last week. Last but not least is the one that we get the most requests for, which are called our TA accounts. So currently, if you want to share have your TA be able to pull the reports on your StockTrak class, you have to give them your login, which is not a very good system to have. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be releasing our new TA account update. Your TAs will be able to see all of your class assignments. They can create new ones. They can pull all of your reports. The only thing is TA can't do is edit your trading rules or create a new class themselves. So you can give this to another professor, you can give it to one of your students. We'll have more information about the actual TA accounts when we release them in a couple of weeks. So this is going to be a big one, especially as we start getting towards grading season. So next up, I want to talk about what StockTrak has been doing for financial literacy. So financial literacy is something that's very near and dear to our hearts. We spend a lot of our time and effort focusing on financial literacy initiatives. Beyond the trading engine, we've been working on budgeting and curriculum, high school level especially, but we've been working with more and more colleges for introductory financial literacy courses, campus-wide challenge, department-wide initiatives, and just generally promoting financial literacy, credit education, and things like that across the school. So the anchor behind this is our new budgeting game. So you've probably seen us mention this by email a few times by now, but we launched our budgeting game a year ago. We've been improving it since then. And the way the budgeting game works is it puts your students in the role of a college student with a part-time job or someone who just graduated from college and just started their full-time job. You can also mix and match and make it so they start as a college student and then graduate after a few months so they can see what that transition looks like. So the way the game works, and I'm not going to go into it in too far of detail, but I'm starting here, and I have my objectives that I need to go through. To play the game, I roll the dice, which puts me forward through time. To start out the game, I need to choose my expenses. You as the professor get to choose what the middle of expense is, but the students have a cheaper or a more expensive option depending on how they want this to impact their budget. So I'm going to choose a medium house, I'm going to choose a cheap data plan for my phone, and I'm going to choose an expensive grocery plan. Now, this is while I'm in part-time mode, and you might have seen those numbers look pretty small because we assume the student has roommates. When a student is in full-time mode, all the expenses get a lot more expensive, and you as a professor do get to control most of them. So I click the dice to roll through. Every month, I need to set my budget, where the game shows me my expected income. So I have 342 times 4. As a part-time student, the student also works in a cafe, so they get some tips on their job. And we also deduct taxes. They compare their expected income with their known bills, so how much rent are they going to pay, how much they have for all their regular bills, plus they need to start learning how to estimate their unplanned expenses. How much other stuff you're going to have to spend each month. I happen to know this number is about $500 per month, but there's quite a lot of variation in that. And then they see their total expected income, how many expenses they have, how much surplus or shortfall will they have. So if they're not able to meet that, they do have other opportunities to work extra hours of their job and do other things to make money throughout the game. We give the most points to students who set a savings goal each month of at least 10% of their expected income. So for me, that'd be about $130. The game is telling me this is going to be quite hard because I'm already in the red, so I'm going to need to find a few different ways to make up that difference. And as the game goes through, I move forward through time based on my dice roll. The game gets interrupted occasionally with lessons, so the first lesson in the game is talking about credit and debit cards, because students need to use their credit or debit card for every purchasing decision in the game. So in this case, it teaches them a little bit about the difference between their credit and debit card, when their credit card is due, which in this case is the 19th of each month for our game, and gives them bonus points for when they get their answers correct. As I progress through the game, my bills are issued and they're due a week later. I have some time to pay them, but I need to make sure I do get it on time or it starts impacting my credit score and I start getting late fees. For every event that comes up in the game, I either have a choice to spend or not spend. So if I buy the subscription, I have the opportunity of increasing my quality of life, which I will do. And for all of my expenses, I can use either my debit card to take it out of my checking account or my credit card to put it on my credit card and pay it off later. And so as the game goes on, the students earn points through these different methods. They learn how to manage their cash, managing their credit card to overcome their shortfalls, and making sure they can start hitting their savings goals each month. Every time they get paid, they get a pay stub showing how their allocation between all of the different taxes. And then every weekend, these students have the opportunity to earn more money or take other actions that have different impacts throughout the game. Everything is really centered on having students understand the difference between financial decisions they're making, understanding what impacts their credit scores, that you can't ignore your quality of life. The activity of budgeting is not just choose the cheapest option for everything and never spend money, because that's just not how people work. And generally speaking, understanding how money evolves over time and how their own finances evolve over time in a sped up method that lets them see how these decisions have an impact over the long term in a short period of time. So if you'd like a full demo of the budget game, I can arrange that for you. Just reach out by email and we can get you set up. But I'm not going to spend too much more time on that now. The other side on the financial literacy standpoint are what we call the weekly deposits. So typically in a class on StockTrak, you would give your students $100,000 or $1 million or $10 million for them to build their portfolio. This works great for finance classes. It gives students a lot of money to play around with, and they can make a lot of decisions with it. But when we've been doing research with students who are not necessarily in a finance program, giving a student a $100,000 portfolio is actually having kind of the opposite effect of what we wanted. It's not making them more comfortable with investing, because it's just saying that you need $100,000 to be able to start thinking about investing. It's a rich man's game, and it becomes a little bit even more discouraging than we thought. So our weekly deposits turns this on their head, where it becomes more of an exercise of how you would actually invest in the real world. So instead of giving your students $1 million, you can give your students $1,000 to start with. And then with weekly deposits, you can say, my students get another $500 every week they need to invest. So that's deposited every week into their portfolio on Sunday night. So when the students log in Monday morning, they have more cash so they can start investing in the other stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So this, we've found, has a lot better impact with teaching students about investing and how to keep their eyes on their money in the real world. And the students have the options, of course. Do I diversify with something else, or do I put this back into what I've already chosen in my previous investments? And also has had a huge boost in just general engagement, because the students are thinking about what they're going to be doing with this money every time they have it, instead of just setting their portfolio and forgetting about it. That doesn't mean they're necessarily trading more often, they're just engaging with it and paying closer attention. One side note is that because the weekly deposits give these students deposits every week, it's not compatible with our risk-adjusted rankings. So you would not use weekly deposits with the Sharpe ratio or the Jensen's alpha, because it messes up the entire calculations of the variance of the portfolio over time. Last up for the financial literacy side are certificates. So the certificate functionality on StockTrak, I'm not sure if you've seen our badges. We kind of quietly released them last year, but the badge functionality lets students get badges they can show off on the rankings page by completing certain tasks. The certificates takes this one step further, where there's a bunch of system-defined assignments for investing in personal finance, and when students finish these tasks, the system will issue them a certificate, a PDF with their name on it, the date they completed it, and the skills they've mastered along the way. So as of right now, we have our Investing 101 certificate, which is focusing on learning about investing. It starts with just the very basics of what is a stock and goes all the way through some basic option strategies. There's 10 chapters of about 100 lessons total. And we also have our financial literacy certificate, which is focused on about 80 different personal finance topics, and students need to make a certain completion rate in the budget game to earn it. So the certificate functionality is ideal for entirely hands-off sessions, so department challenges, campus challenges, where there's not necessarily a grade being assigned, and there's not necessarily a seminar or a class centered on it. You're just using the platform as part of a program to promote financial literacy as a whole. So that's the long and short of everything that's new on StockTrak this semester. We're going to have even more available for next fall. So let me open this up for some questions. And the first question I got is, can I get a free trial of the financial literacy resources? So yes, if you want to try out the budget gamer and the other financial resources for this semester, we can set that up for you. Just let me know. You can send me an email at ksmith@stocktrak.com, and I'll set you up with a free class where you can play with it for the remainder of the spring semester. If you just want to try it out yourself, or if you have a small group of students you'd like to try it out with, I'd be happy to give you free access for now. Do we plan on adding the ability to place multiple orders that cancel each other? So limit and stop orders on the same position where one executing cancels the other. This comes up once a year or so. It would be a nice to have, but it's a pretty big change to our trading platform. We're trying to figure out where this is going to fit in. So if this is something that other professors want to see, let us know. As of right now, we're planning on adding it eventually, but I don't have a date for it yet. It's not something that we're going to have for the fall. I can tell you that almost for sure. But it is something that comes up once in a while. So if you think it's going to be a very valuable addition to our class, just let us know. Can we get ICE futures added back in? So like cotton, coffee, cocoa, those kinds of commodity futures. So we would love to put those futures back in. The only reason we removed them in the first place is the ICE exchange changed the rules for usage, where they were going to, I think, increased the fees by about 5 times what we were paying before, and we didn't want to raise the price of StockTrak just to include those. So we're trying to work with the exchanges and get some academic exemptions from those fees. As soon as we can get them back, our system is set up to handle them in the back end, so as soon as we can turn it on, we want to. I don't have a date for that. I know it's ongoing negotiations, so it's kind of, I'm not entirely sure where we are with it, but it's more of a legal and contractual than a actual problem that we need to solve with the platform. Is StockTrak planning on adding anything related to ESG ratings? So ESG ratings have come up a lot in the last, I would say, 3 months with StockTrak, and we've had a number of classes and a number of corporations looking to add some kind of ESG rankings to their class, or at least show ESG ratings on the trading page. So we're in active discussions with some data providers to give us a feed for ESGs, which we will be posting to the page as soon as we get it. We're hoping to have something available for the fall, but we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like yet. So that's a high priority for us as well, because ESG is becoming a very important topic to investing. So I don't see any other questions at this time, and we are just about out of time. So if you have any questions, reach out to me, Kevin K. Smith at StockTrak.com. Everything we add to the StockTrak platform comes from professor and student suggestions. We're not a huge team. We are pretty quick on our feet and able to add stuff, and serving classes is what we do. So if there's something that should be changed to better suit your class, let us know and we'll make it happen. So have a great afternoon.